Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You are listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak or at noahfilipiak.com/give.
What's up? We're back. The podcast is back. Welcome to episode 15. I posted a bonus episode last episode 14. I hope some of you enjoyed that, got to listen to it. It was a sermon that I did from back in January. The last sermon that I have done after preaching pretty much every week for about 13 years. I moved. I've told you that. I moved from Lansing to Grand Rapids, and it's been crazy. It's been a crazy couple months. It's been renovating a rental house in Lansing, trying to get it up for sale. Been renovating that since December, and I am not a renovator, in case you are wondering. I'm good at other things. I have a few things I'm good at, and that is definitely not one of them. We moved. We got our house that we lived in for sale. We did accept an offer on it, so that's awesome. So waiting to close. I think that'll be in a few weeks. We're waiting to get the exact date. Living with my in-laws right now. It's so funny when you tell people you're living with your in-laws, and that's why I haven't done a real podcast episode until now. I'm still living with my in-laws, but I've asked them to leave their own house so that I can record on the kitchen table. So maybe in an hour or so, if this episode goes long. Not that I would ever do that. I've never done that before. A long episode. You know, maybe they'll come in and I can interview them and see how it's been having me live at their house. When you tell people that you live with your in-laws or you're living with your in-laws, they usually their face, it's like they just sucked on a lemon or got like vinegar squirted up their nose or something. Like their face kind of contorts and they look at you like, oh man, I am so sorry that, like your dog died or something. That's how their face looks. My in-laws are great. I don't have any problems with my in-laws. We've always got along really well, and I love them and they love me. And so here's a funny story. When I first started dating my now wife, we were both at Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids, and my in-laws lived just kind of down the street from there. My wife lived on campus, but she would come home a lot, obviously, to visit her parents a few minutes away. And so I started dating Jen, and I'm not sure if we were dating yet or just kind of hanging out, prior to officially dating. But I was over at her parents' house, and her mom said, well, feel free, to eat like anything in the house. Just there's snacks and whatever. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. So I did. I started eating things in the house. And you know how that is. Like, you've been there. Somebody will offer you snacks, and sometimes it's like if you're on the receiving end, it's like, do I eat the snacks? Like nobody else is eating the snacks. It'd be weird if I ate the snacks. And so I just ate. I was like, yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to eat stuff. And her mom was like, I love that you eat my food, like my snacks. I love that you eat my stuff, that you feel comfortable enough, to do that. And she was legitimately happy about this. The backstory, again, my wife, she doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say things like this. Eventually, you'll find her and tell her she better start listening to censor these things. But I guess the backstory is her ex-boyfriend, he didn't eat the snacks, right? He was one of the oh, it would be imposing or rude to eat the snacks that I've been asked to eat. So her mom loved that I ate the snacks, and I'm thinking, this is amazing. Like, I need to continue dating this girl because I have a whole house I can come to eat the snacks. That is not the only reason that I continued to date my wife, but I have to say it helped. You know, it helped push things along in the right direction. It was definitely the other way around when we started dating. Let's be honest. My wife dumped me once. And I was definitely the one pursuing the relationship. And my wife had what I call the sweepstakes of the multiple young men at Cornerstone University vying for her affection. I won the sweepstakes somehow. First time that had ever happened in my life. She would probably not like me sharing all these things. So they're funny though. So I'm gonna stop just because I know it's good for me. Well, I mean, I kind of know. If I knew what was good for me, I wouldn't have said anything that I just said. But so there you go. I'm living with my in-laws. I'm back in the place where I get to eat all the snacks. It's really not so bad. The problem is it's smaller when you have now 7 people living here. And all my stuff is packed in boxes, like it's in storage. And so, it's just, you're always kind of walking on top of people, and it's stressful, just for those reasons. So happy to announce that, and it's stressful. You can't do a podcast. Thankfully, the kids are in school as of this week, but last week, oh man, that was a historical week last week. My wife was setting up her classroom all week. Very stressful week for her. New school district, new job, 2 classrooms. She's a music teacher. And so it was basically me and the kiddos, 7, 5, and 2, hanging out all week while I'm trying to kind of catch up and do things. And so got today, kicked my in-laws out of their own house, and here we are with you recording. But we, what would you call it? We bought a house yesterday. So we agreed to, we made an offer, they countered, we agreed to the counter. I am going to be living in the booming metropolis of Middleville, Michigan. It is a relatively rural town, 30 minutes or so south of Grand Rapids. If you came to me 2 years ago, when I was in the thick of being an urban, multi-ethnic church, I'm not multi-ethnic, but the church plant is multi-ethnic, urban, diverse, lots of poverty, sort of incarnational, living in the inner city, ministering to the poor, ministry in Lansing. And you told me, hey, dude, in 2 years, you are going to live in Middleville, Michigan. And you're going to work at Ada Bible Church in the suburbs of Grand Rapids. So now we're talking very homogenous, white. The church predominantly, middle class, upper class. And Middleville, from what I can tell, rural with a fair amount of residential neighborhood as well, but very homogenous, white. And if you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, you can go back and listen to previous episodes about multi-ethnic ministry and lifestyle and all these sorts of things. This is a change I did not see coming, and I couldn't have planned if I tried. And so I'm going to talk about that a bit on today's episode. That's going to be the topic of the day. How did an urban, multi-ethnic church planner end up in rural Middleville and working at a suburban white church? How did that happen? I'm going to talk to you about a few things before we get there. We'll have a little fun and some serious stuff too. We are going to open the mailbag. Next episode, though, or in an upcoming episode, I'm going to interview a friend of mine, Jason Redowdy. He runs the ministry Hearts Alive and Free. Check that out. Does a lot of men's sexual purity sort of ministry, as well as just general men's ministry and marriage ministry that he and his wife lead together. But Jason has this quote. I asked him if it originated with him in a humble way. It does. He kind of said, well, I can't really take credit for it because it's a conglomeration of many people's wisdom. But I think it is Jason's quote. And he says it a lot when he talks specifically about his own story. So I'll let him share his own story when I interview him. But the quote that he says is, when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. So think about that for a second. I'll say it again. When the pain of staying the same, so whatever you're in, the addiction that you're into, it's painful, right? You know it's painful. But you don't change because change is really painful too, right? So you're like, I'd rather have like the comfort of my addiction, and even though it's painful, it would be more painful to change. So I'm not going to change, because if I change, I have to give up the comfort of my addiction, and I have to be vulnerable. I have to make myself known, and all these things are going to cause a lot of pain. So I'm going to choose the lesser pain. That's essentially the quote. I'm going to choose the lesser pain. And we stay in the addiction because it's the lesser pain. So the rest of the quote, that was just explaining the beginning part. So let me say it again. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, that's when we actually change. That's when we break from our addiction. We seek healing. We seek help. We make changes in our life because the pain of staying the same is now greater than the pain of change. So we're choosing the lesser pain. But we finally realized, okay, staying the same is so painful. Like, this is so awful. I can't bear it anymore. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to do it because it'll be better than what I'm going through in my addiction. So I'm going to choose to change. And what's ironic is this is a philosophy that has helped Jason break free from sexual sin that he's going to share, and has restored his marriage, and it'll help you in whatever you're dealing with. What's interesting is God has used that quote recently for me in my struggle with limits. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit right now, but more next week with Jason as well, where I get so overcommitted and I take so much on my shoulders, and it has caused me just incredible stress and burden and depression, frankly. Like, I have a friend right now, he might be listening, he's struggling with depression. And I relate completely. I think we're wired very similarly. When you are wired to be an entrepreneur, and you're good at it, and you're good at starting things, and you start things that are noble, and they're for the kingdom, and they're good, and you say yes and yes and yes and yes because you're helping people, you end up getting all of this on you, and it becomes really an addiction to being overcommitted. And there's deep things here. There's insecurities here. There's areas of, sometimes for me it's been, I need to prove myself to God. I need to prove myself to the world, to my peers, to whatever, that I'm valuable. And so I'm going to do these things, and they better be successful. So I have all this anxiety and stress because I'm doing all these ministry things and starting them. And the result is pain. Pain is the result, because you can only spread yourself so thin. You're human. You're not Superman or woman. You're not the Holy Spirit. And you end up being crushed under the weight of the burden that really you've put on yourself. But the pain of change is equally, it's painful, because it's really hard to say no, because you're going to let somebody down. They're going to be disappointed in you. They're going to think, man, Noah, if you cared, you would have said yes to this. And they're going to write you off, or they're going to call you this, or they're going to call you that. That's painful. It's even more painful to stop the things you're already doing. Like, it would be painful for me to stop this podcast. And might sound stupid because you're not in the addiction, but I am. And I have to weigh carefully things like the podcast. So my beyondthebattle.net small groups, they're going to continue, but they're going to be a lot different. They're going to be done in a way that is sustainable for me as I move into a new life and a new full-time job working at Ada Bible Church, because I had freed up some time in my schedule to do some writing sorts of things, and those things aren't there anymore. You might notice I'm doing more podcasts now and less blogging. I love blogging. I have a bajillion drafts that I want to write still. I should blog more if I want to be more of a, quote, successful author. But I don't, because I have limits. There's just only so much that I can do. So I'm sharing that with you because I think some of you struggle with limits. And I think some of you need to just wrestle through how that quote applies to your life. When the pain of staying the same, so for me it's being crushed under the burden of church planting, ministry. Some of this bleeds into how I ended up in Middleville. And, well, that's a different story. Middleville. I really wanted to live in Grand Rapids, not Middleville. But how I ended up at Ada Bible Church and being the union small groups pastor and not being a senior pastor and really doing a job that's going to be a lot less burdensome than what I've done the last 13 years. But also not starting a million things, even though I still have more things going than most people do, and having to wrestle with that and discern that in community and having accountability for those things. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. And it did. I don't want to live like this anymore. And that happened to me in 2017 when I finished the Transforming Center, Ruth Haley Barton, the cohort that I did. That was my rule of life, and I've never lived into it. I've never lived into living with these limits because it's so hard to make that change. And so I guess in some ways you are part of my community in a way. Even if I don't know you personally, it is an avenue of accountability for me that I am making changes. And living. And I just said no to something yesterday, and it's to a friend, and I still like, oh, he's going to think this about me. I'm like, no. You're doing good. You go, Noah, say no to things because you don't want to go back to living in that pain. So going to interview Jason about his story through sexual addiction next episode or in an upcoming episode shortly. And you'll find that quote and even hearing Jason's story, it's going to help you find freedom from whatever addiction you're mired in. I mean, shoot, your addiction might be you're on social media too much and you're just wasting your life. You watch too much TV or like me, you can't say no. Like you have this limits problem. So that'll be good. So we're going to check that out. And again, just for clarity, for those of you that are auditing the podcast, this is not a really long intro. I'm just doing a little bit different format this time. I'm allowed to do whatever I want. It's my podcast. And I will cry if I want to. So next, I want to talk to you about something really cool that Covenant Eyes has brought back. So I love Covenant Eyes. I'm a big fan. The quick spiel. I haven't talked about Covenant Eyes in a while. I'm an affiliate for them. So if you use my promo code BEYOND, you get 2 months free of Covenant Eyes. And yeah, it is a way of supporting me and the podcast efforts and blogging and writing efforts, all those sorts of things, if you use my affiliate code BEYOND when you check out. So, Covenant Eyes, in the last year, they rolled out screen accountability, revolutionary, super helpful. And I got to say, I use Covenant Eyes. My wife is my accountability partner, and I hold several people accountable. I'm their ally. I'm the one who gets the accountability reports, and I've gotten inappropriate images sent on these accountability reports sent to me that they've looked at. And what screen accountability does is it has an algorithm, and it detects all of the stuff on your screens. as well as your devices. Most devices are covered. Some there you can read on the website which ones they're still developing. And the ones that don't have screen accountability are still covered in sort of the classic sort of keyword sort of way that I used to operate under. But the point is, you get these images sent to you, and if you didn't look at anything inappropriate, it'll just send sort of random images or images that sort of fit the algorithm. Like, I do a lot of video chatting, and so if somebody's face is on the screen, it's a lot of skin. That's probably, I think, part of the algorithm is skin on the screen, and so, blurred out images of my video chats of my small groups will show up, and my wife will see those, whatever. So in this case, I'm on the receiving end of the praise God. I'm not looking at porn or anything, but unfortunately, a couple of the guys I hold accountable are, and so I'll get this image, and it's blurred out. It's just an amazing software. So it's blurred out, and why this is better than keyword accountability is because there's always been loopholes with keyword, right? So if you're using software that's just detecting keywords, you can get around it. You can use Instagram, you can use whatever. Like nowadays, the web is very image based, and these images don't have keywords with them. They have numbers and letters and code that is just the name of that picture. And so these images get detected, they get blurred out and sent to the ally, the accountability partner. And then you can have a conversation with your person. Hey, what's up? Like, you looked at this. Here's when you looked at it. And it's very effective for accountability and coverage. So what Covenant Eyes has brought back that I'm super excited about is their custom block list. So a lot of the guys that I hold accountable or that I do my Beyond the Battle.net groups with, they really need that block list. And what the block list is basically like, hey, I go to YouTube and I look at stuff, and it's not going to be stuff that shows up on an accountability report. It's not really, or on a screen accountability even. It's not really porn. It's music videos. I mean, man, music videos today are just, they're porn. I mean, they are so sensual. And it's crazy. Or there's tons of other stuff out there, right? That's on YouTube. You could be watching a comedy video, and then the next thumbnail is of that happened to my wife and I. We were watching a comedy video it was really funny. I don't remember what it was. This was a while back. And then the next thumbnail that this same comedy company made, it was like of these naked women, and then they weren't, like, they had their hands, I think, covering up their nipples or something like that. But it was like, because it was on YouTube, there's certain rules to what you can put on there. But I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, I'm glad my wife's next to me, but I can never watch comedy videos again on YouTube. And I'm at a point where it's not a problem for me to be able to not watch those, and praise God for that. But there's other points in my journey and struggle where if I was even on YouTube, man, I would have sought those things out. In your struggle, you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm not going to go look at porn. I'm just going to go to YouTube, and I'm just going to watch a comedy video of a stand-up comic, or of whatever. But you know that, it was, excuse me, Funny or Die. That was the name of the comedy company. So don't go there, because they got bad stuff on their stuff that they made that they think is funny, and it's porn. So anyway, back to this point of why custom block list is so needed and helpful for a lot of people is whether you're keeping your kids accountable or yourself. You can get to a point where you're rationalizing, and in the back of your mind, if I go to YouTube and I'm just watching comedy video, I'm just watching whatever video is out there, that eventually that trail of thumbnails or that trail of, what the Funny or Die was that we watched? Because I'm just telling you how innocent it was. How innocent. It was a link we saw on somebody's Facebook page or something like that. And it was the guy from The Office. I am not a I am not planning Hollywood, or what? Not say I don't even know the name of it. Entertainment Tonight. That is not me. I don't know even stars' names. It's John. This guy with the Polish last name. I'm Polish. My brother, John Krasniski, or whatever his name is. He was on The Office, and then he is now the what is it? It's not Mission Impossible, but he's in the spy show. Was it Clear and Present Danger? I don't know what show he's in. He's playing some role. See, I didn't do my homework here. This is all off the cuff. And some of you that love your Hollywood, you're making fun of me right now. Well, I'm making fun of you because I live in reality. I don't really care about this stuff. But anyway, he's playing this like spy role now, and I just can't think of it. But it was this video that mashed like scenes of the two shows together, and it was quite funny and very clean and innocent. But this shows you that you can just watch this funny clip that then takes you to porn. Like the next thumbnail was porn, right? And so the point of all this is a custom block list. If you're at a spot where you're like, if I go to YouTube, I'm going to look at stuff. It could be music videos, it could be whatever, but I will be lusting, I will be sinning. It is going to lead me to a dark place. Custom block list, you just put YouTube on your custom block list and you cannot go there. It's awesome. So on a filter, it's not going to filter out YouTube, and depending on how you set up your filter, but you can put a custom block list for youtube.com, bam. Or same with vimeo.com, same with, you may have found a website that the filter just doesn't pick up, and you looked at porn and you tell your accountability partner when you're sober and you say, hey, I looked here, or it could be some lingerie thing or swimsuit thing, and for whatever reason it's not getting picked up. You put that link on your custom block list, your ally, your accountability partner, you can set it up where they control it. They're your filter guardian, and they control your custom block list. And it is a really, really needed and helpful way for a lot of people that are in the middle of the addiction to be able to still navigate the web. And when you mess up and you find a site that you've slipped through the cracks, custom block list. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that because they had removed that for a little while when they brought out the screen accountability. And by popular demand, some of you in my Beyond the Battle groups told me, man, I need that back. And I listened to the people, and I went to Covenant Eyes and said that. I'm not saying they changed it because of me. Like, man, the flip side, baby, we got all this power. No, but others and me and Covenant Eyes listens. If you have ideas to how to make Covenant Eyes better, let them know. They do listen, and this is an example of that. So custom block list is back. Use it. If you think you need it, talk to your accountability partner, your ally about it. And again, you go to covenanteyes.com, use promo code BEYOND, and you'll get 2 months for free to try Covenant Eyes out. Put it on all your devices for the same price. It's a good thing. All right, here we go. Moving on. Oh, so next, this is this format of the show. This is the random buffet show, the potpourri show, where you never quite know what's coming next. We're going from serious to not serious and back, and it's like a roller coaster or being seasick where maybe you want to throw up right now. I apologize for that. Speaking of being seasick and wanting to throw up, my wife and I went to San Diego a few weeks ago. I feel funny when I say that, like, yeah, it's in San Diego. Like, I just travel the world on a yacht and visit luxurious places. So back to the poverty gospel versus prosperity gospel episode a few episodes ago. I feel like I have to preface everything. So you're like, oh, Noah is not in this sort of elite prosperity gospel person. And then I have to preface other things the other way. I go to God and I'm saying, God, why did you make me this way? Why did you make me to think this way? To have to do this. So yes, we're in San Diego. So I have to preface that by saying we haven't been on a real vacation together, like nice, expensive. It's really since our honeymoon. And even this we did on the cheap. So, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was our 15-year anniversary. Praising God for that. And went to San Diego. We just wanted to go west. We'd never been to California. Cali. Never been to Cali. If you're cool, that's how you say it. So I live in Michigan, and I now call it Michi. Seeing if that catches on. I live in Michi. I don't know. If you think I'm serious there, you need to listen to more episodes of The Flip Side. So, we wanted to go California. Never been there. Never been really out west much at all. So, San Diego was great. Even in the summer, they have better weather than Michigan because they don't have any humidity there. It was beautiful. But we did whale watching, and it was incredible. We actually saw a humpback whale like jump out of the water and sploosh, pretty close to the boat. And man, so many of these tangents. I say that like this is going to be a sermon illustration for sure, but I saw the tail end of the whale. So we're watching the whale. We saw the whale a lot. It was doing this thing where it breaches, they call it. So you can see it breathing. And I saw it when it was like way off in the distance when it jumped out of the water. But it just looked like a white big splash. Like you couldn't really see what was going on. But up close, we're watching, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I got my phone out because I'm taking videos for my kids. And there earlier had been dolphins around the boat, and that was cool because we hadn't seen anything. So when you saw dolphins and you're from Michi and you're in Cali, and that sounds awful just saying it as a joke, like I feel like an idiot. Then dolphins are a big deal. I think for the Californians, dolphins or sea lions, it's kind of like seeing a deer or a squirrel where somebody will be like, a deer! And in Michigan, we're like, yep, there's a bajillion of them. Like, we hate them because we run into them with our cars. But anyway, so we had seen some dolphins. That was super cool for us. But now there's the whale. This is like the thing. We found the thing, the whale. And on our trip's almost over. It was looking like we weren't going to see a whale. So the whale's breaching. But the breaching's cool, but you just kind of see the back and it kind of rolls over the water. And so then there's like all these dolphins off on the other side of the boat. Not like hundreds, but, maybe 8 and 10, and you could see them. And it was cool because the whale is being really boring at this point. Like we've been watching. I'm like, dude, do your jump thing. That's what we want to see. Like, hello, that's what we paid for. Produce, we're your customer. We're your fans. Do what we want to this whale. And he's just chilling, breaching. So I start watching the dolphins, and they're kind of playing around, having fun. It's pretty cool. And then everybody in the boat is like, woo! And I'm like, look over, and I see the whale on its descent, right, going back down into the water. Sploosh. He did the big splashy whale thing that they do on that insurance commercial. It's for like the Hartford, I think, or Prudential, or one of those. It's like, life insurance is a whale jumping out of the water. Splash. That's what the whale did right in front of us. And so everyone saw it. I saw the very tail end of it. My video is hilarious because I got a video of the splash. No whale in the shot. They have a video that they shot that I've watched longingly. That will be a sermon illustration someday. I'll preach the sermon to you later. But I say all that to say that is not what I was planning to talk about. I was actually planning to talk about puking. And I was talking about puking because you want to puke. This is the puke episode because I keep going up and down with my topics. These kids were puking all over the boat. It was horrible. It was like it was not the whale watching tour. It was like the puke watching tour. Like we start and it was sweet. Honestly, they're like, all right, this is going to be the roughest part of the boat ride. It was at the beginning, I don't know how the ocean works, but you leave kind of the beaches of San Diego and you hit a certain part of the ocean, I think where it drops, or I don't know what it is, or there's something, but there were some pretty legit, like, rolling waves, and the boat is like, and it felt like a really smooth roller coaster. I was loving it. It was like one of my favorite parts of the boat ride. And they were talking to some people, chatting it up with people on the boat like prior to it, and this lady across from us is like, yeah, we took our Dramamine, and my kids took their Dramamine and whatever, and like we're going out in this our boat, and kids just start turning like green and purple, and my wife is a teacher like of elementary school music. She knows what it looks like when a kid is going to puke. She's literally like, no, grab that trash can. And I did. And we give it to this kid, and he just starts puking into it. And the kid next to me that the guy's holding, he just like carries his kid over the floor, and he just starts puking all over the floor. And it's like, this is awful. Stop puking. And like the woman that took the Dramamine, she brought her own like little puke bags, and they're like mouth sized, and they go right up to your mouth, and her and her kids are just like puking into the mouth sized puke bags. Oh man, it was an experience. So they need to advertise that on the whale watching website, that it really is like half puke watching, half whale watching. And so I hope none of you are puking from this episode, but it's fun. This is what happens. I mean, all my stuff's in storage. I'm at my in-laws' kitchen table. They're going to be home probably in 10 minutes. I'm going to text them. I'm going to be like, hey, can you guys wait to come to your own house? Because I need a little more time. So, all right. So we will continue the theme of going from topic to topic. I also just put the pop filter back on my microphone. See, when your stuff's all in storage and you have to set up your stuff at the kitchen table, it's a little crazy. Stuff's everywhere, and the pop filter was off to the side. I didn't realize it. The pop filter is that like fancy like mesh circle that's in front of the microphone. It looks like it costs $1,000. They are like $7. It's pretty awesome. So pop filter's back. So that sounds better now. The P sound. So up to this point, you were probably like, "Oh, the P sound, it's killing me. Stop the P." And now when I do it, it doesn't annoy you. So you're welcome. You would never. My goal is to make sure you're never annoyed on this podcast. I would hate to ever do anything to annoy you, like have a very loud Noah's rant drop, for example. I would never, where like Tarzan is screaming and your ears are bleeding. I wouldn't do that to you. So what else is going on here? We're gonna so okay, I'm on Instagram now. Yeah, that's right. So I had an Instagram account years ago, and I was like, Instagram is stupid. I don't understand it. Like, I don't want to just take selfies of myself all the time and post them on Instagram, or this idea of if it didn't make it onto Instagram, it didn't really happen. Actually, some of the reason too was I was like, there's a lot of porn on Instagram. I don't want to worry about that and be exposed to that. So in my new job, Union small groups pastor at Ada Bible Church. Union is a ministry to 18 to 30-year-olds, Tuesday nights. And so I am legitimately old now. I'm 36. Technologically, I am old. Like, you've noticed that social media platforms, they go with certain generations, and like Facebook isn't used by high schoolers. I don't know about college students, probably some, but they use Snapchat. Snapchat's like the weirdest thing, and hopefully I never use Snapchat. And I'm good with that, because when I was your age, I walked to school barefoot in the snow, uphill both ways is what we did. That's right. We liked it. We liked it too. So anyway, Instagram, I'm using it now again as a way to be hip with the kids, like a way to be relevant to the, I can't think of another stupid thing to say. But I'm using it again. So if you have ideas on how to use it well, let me know. Besides taking pictures of your food and of yourself all the time. Yeah. So, at Noah Filipiak. So, yeah, if you're on there, let me know. Talk to me about it. And it seems like, as far as like the porn stuff goes, I feel like I remember when I used it before, there was some kind of like public stream to all these photos, or maybe it's categories or something. Maybe that's the thing. And now it seems like it's pretty easy. I can just look at the pictures of my friends, like the people that I follow, and that feels good and safe for me. But again, shoot, if you're at a spot like you're looking at your Instagram is an outlet for you to go look at porn, because you're going to go to those other places, those other channels, hashtags, whatever is out there. Get rid of Instagram. I'm like, why don't people get rid of stuff that they're looking at porn on? Like, I know I need Instagram, but you're looking at porn on it, or very close to porn. You're lusting over it. I need it. You need, like, the pain of, I can't ever say Jason's quote right, and legitimately I already deleted it from my notes. There we go. Undo works well. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. Like, yeah, it's painful to get rid of Instagram if you're looking at porn on it. Go through that pain so that you stop looking at porn on it. This is not rocket science. Jesus says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. This is in Matthew 5:27 through 31 or so. Right after he says, to look at a woman lustfully is to commit adultery in your heart. So basically, getting rid of Instagram is better than gouging out your eyes and cutting off your hands. So, yeah, I think he was onto something there. I mean, I don't think he was onto something with mutilating your body, and nor was that his literal point. His point was, do what it takes to be free, because it'll be worth it. So, there you go. But I am on Instagram, at Noah Filipiak. So, follow me. Do you follow people? And give me some advice on how to use it well. So I can be hip with the kids again. All right. We're going to do some mailbag. This is a very popular show, if you didn't know that. I like when people are like, my podcast just launched to number 9 on the all-time podcast list. I'm in front of Anderson Cooper and Barack Obama's podcast. Like, I don't think he has one, but you know what I mean. Like, and Christian friends, name associates, people I see do that, and I'm like, good for you. Mine is not. I'm not ahead of anyone. So I joke about how popular the podcast is. It's multi-million, listeners. So we get a lot of email. Not really. But we do have some email this time, and I do love getting your emails. So let me tell you the email. It is podcast@beyondthebattle.net. Let me say that one more time. podcast@beyondthebattle.net. Let's jump into that mailbag.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
Okay. Mailbag. We have 2 we're going to get to. First one I'm going to read. I'm going to not read the person's name. They didn't say one way or the other. But it deals with same-sex attraction, and I like to be real sensitive of that. I am so thankful for my friends who have same-sex attraction. Some identify as gay, lesbian. Others prefer same-sex attraction. Talking about Christians who are faithful to the Bible's commands for traditional marriage and heterosexual sexual relationships, but are struggling through their one of my friends calls it unwanted same-sex attraction, and for him that's I was like, well, that really kind of hits the nail on the head. So anyway, this is I'm thankful for all of you and for your vulnerability with me in the conversations that we've had. So this friend who has confided in me, has same-sex attraction, And it's been a long time listener, follower of the blog, really, reader and commenter on my blog. So shout out, thank you. Big encouragement to me over the years. He says, let's see, where will I start? Come on now. It's a little bit long of an email. He's talking about listening to episode 12 of the podcast, of this very podcast. And in episode 12, I talk about, well, let me just read it because I found it. I listened to The Flip Side, podcast number 12, probably 4 weeks ago. I'm not a big podcast guy. Well, you should be. You should be a big Flip Side podcast guy. I'm not a big podcast guy, but the email came through that it's about the cross. And I wanted to hear what you had to say. Skip down. He says, what you told your SSA friend, that would be same-sex attraction, friend, about the cross as the answer to his struggles was spot on. Again, this coming from a guy with same-sex attraction writing in. Along with the verses you gave about denying self and taking up our cross, I would add John, who always seems to get to the heart of things. Truly, quote, truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life will lose it, but whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. And that is in John chapter 12, verse 24 and following. So we want to check that out. So the emailer says, it's really helped dealing with SSA coming to terms that the cross means something dies, that there's death of what is not Christ within, that it's reality, not just a doctrine or a point of faith. And it helps knowing the difference between what is your life in this world and your life in Christ. And for real, hating what is not of Christ in you. There's strength in the fight of faith when we love what God loves and hate what he hates. I don't know about your friend's journey, but for me, these SSA longings have had more to do with the lack, like you said, and the emotions behind that than sex. Sex just ramps up what I'm fighting in my soul. So what the emailer is referring to is the lack that I talk about, where we are desiring, this is a sort of beyond the battle book concept. We are desiring to be valuable. We're desiring to be told that we're loved. We're desiring to be accepted. And that's the lack. And there's a chapter in the book that talks about that lack. Like, where does it come from? And it's been given to us by culture. It's been given to us by sort of traumatic relationships and conversations from our upbringings and things like that. And of wanting to belong and not belonging, and all sorts of things that go along with that. And so the lack that the emailer is talking about is that these SSA longings for him and the emotions behind that is that this, in this case it's a guy writing this, that another man could give that to me, that another man could provide me with the intimacy, the security, the longing, the comfort, the validation, being told that I'm, valuable, that I'm okay, that I measure up, accepting me in a way that that other man could heal me, could make me feel okay. And he says the sex just ramps that up, what I'm fighting in my soul. But he goes on and says, the cross is God's grace for putting off and letting go to the world and our flesh and our old self. It's death for real to what means death in us. But that means life from God and an increase of Christ within, a putting on and entering in. That's rest, not struggle. And that's not just SSA, same-sex attraction. Anyone going on with Jesus is always going to be brought to the cross by the Spirit when following him. We only grow by the cross. Tell your friend God is never done with us, to keep the eyes of his heart on Jesus, even when it's hard seeing him, when he fails, or those times when he gets stuck looking at himself. That's awesome. I'm telling you, I said this when I interviewed Kevin Butcher a few episodes ago. He's got a chapter in his book of his book Choose and Choose Again. Great book. A woman, close friend of his he was on staff with as well at church. Multiple sclerosis, I believe it was, but it was a debilitating, degenerative sort of disease. And the chapter was about it not getting better. Because the book is kind of a hope-filled book. It's a lot of really hard, gritty stories that sort of get better. And then her chapter was like, it doesn't always get better. And I talked to Kevin about that, and something I said is like, you need someone that has a degenerative, debilitating disease to be able to give that testimony so that others who have that can hear it. Because if just a pastor like me gets up that doesn't have that debilitating disease, it just sounds really trite. I think it sounds really just like spiritual platitudes. But when somebody that has it is dealing with it, somebody that's infertile, that can't get pregnant, can share about the joy they have in Christ to others that are infertile and can't get pregnant, it has real testimony and grit and substance to it versus somebody that has kids, biological kids, who can get pregnant, and you can't say the same. It doesn't have near the same weight, if any at all. So I was mentioning that with same-sex attraction, that I love hearing from brothers and sisters like this emailer to encourage others who are walking that same path, and to say, no, like, you can find this in Christ, and it's not easy. But it's real, and it's there. And so thank you. This is fantastic. Thank you for that email. All right, we have one more mailbag question. This is a question for me to answer, and it's from one of my Beyond the Battle guys. He says, about 2 weeks ago, I was looking for some game ideas for a party, and one of the pages I opened had a totally inappropriate picture displayed full page when it opened. Thankfully, I was totally shocked by it and closed it within less than a second. What I am wondering is how you think I can or should respond to this in my own mind. It is not a picture I want to have in there, but it pops up at inopportune times and is rather unhelpful. If you have any suggestions, I would appreciate it. Yeah, so great question. First and foremost, don't go back to it. I'm willing to admit vulnerability is good. It's real. I don't know when it was. It was a few years ago. There was a Twitter profile picture. I don't know. I think the rules of Twitter and Facebook is you're not allowed to have like actual porn on there. Like there's a lot of like nudity, right? Like naked, parts. There's a lot of links, and there's a lot of like porn companies that use those social medias to like recruit people into their porn. But I also think what happens, I don't know the rules about it. But I know, at least in this case, like there was this profile, and it was of a topless like girl, like woman, and it was just kind of like, chest up sort of thing, because it was this little thumbnail picture. And this profile had liked one of my posts or something. So like on my notifications, it was like, oh, there it is. Picture of a topless girl just liked one of my posts. And here's the critical point. So that sounds like what happened to this email, or something similar like that. You can't go back to the picture. And I wish I could say I never went back to the picture. And I didn't. I went back to it because I knew it was there. It was again, like I said earlier with the YouTube thing. if you're at a point in your struggle where you're weak, and I obviously was during that season, it was like, oh, I'm just getting onto Twitter to check my notifications, and oh, what do you know? There's like that naked little topless picture there again, right? So if you go back to that picture, what you're doing is it's like you're further tattooing it into your brain. And there literally is, like, you are tattooing things into your brain when you look at porn. And Covenant Eyes does a lot on the brain chemistry stuff. So it's like when you have sex with somebody, God designed your brain to bond to that person that you're having sex with, because you're designed to have sex with your wife or your husband if you're a woman. You're designed to have sex with your spouse. So the bond is a good thing in the way God designed it within marriage. But when you look at porn, you're having sex with the porn. You're having sex with your computer screen or whatever. And so the more you go back to that picture, the more that bond is. It's like if you wrote something out, if you tattooed something or wrote it out in a pencil, but then you went over the same picture twice and 3 times and 10 times and 100 times, it's darker and darker and darker embedded right into your brain. And so anyway, to finish the Twitter story, eventually I figured out you can block on Twitter. Like I was able to block that person's profile and report it as inappropriate and all that stuff. So then it just didn't appear anymore. But back to the mailbag, don't feed the fire. So you looked at it once, you got away from it. Celebrate that. Don't beat yourself up. But eventually it'll fade away. It'll take some time, but as long as you're not feeding the fire, it'll fade away. If you are feeding the fire, good luck. It's not going to fade away. I mean, if you're looking at other stuff, if you keep looking at that, it's just going to reinforce that image. It's going to reinforce the whole concept behind that image, that women are just body parts to be consumed. And so the more you're looking at that type of stuff, the more that's going to be, emphasized in your brain. And so then I would say whenever it does come to mind, as you're saying it's coming to mind, and it's like, man, get out of my brain, right? Just rewire it with the truth. I would pray for that woman, have compassion on her. I've done this before where, like, mentally, you can mentally fantasize in a sexual way. You can also mentally fantasize in a redemptive way. And I will picture draping like a blanket around that naked woman, kind of like you see at a car crash site. If there's like a child, usually the police officer will wrap a blanket around the child. That's just kind of the picture I get of putting a blanket around this woman to clothe her, to cover her up, and to say, like, hey, you don't have to do that. Like, God loves you, and you're created with dignity, and you don't have to base your value on displaying your body parts to the public, And so covering her up mentally, even with an actual blanket or clothing or whatever it might be, pray for her and remind yourself you don't actually want that. I mean, you actually don't want that. Like, your flesh is like, you want this. You're like, actually, no, I don't. I know what that is. I don't actually want that. And then to put it into reality, that is in your mind, it's fantasy, and to live in reality, take deep breaths of oxygen. This is real, like this real life, this table I'm sitting at, this microphone I'm talking into, this is what's real, not that thing in my brain. Talk to your accountability partners about it and say, hey, this is popping in my brain. I got to put it into reality. This is how I'm going to respond to it when it comes. And that's how I would attack that. So hopefully that's helpful. Those are very good questions. We'll close up the mailbag, and podcast at beyondthebattle.net if you want to do mailbag for next time. So what do you know? I'm an hour into the episode. It's been good. It's been that little puking roller coaster we talk about. I mentioned at the beginning I was going to talk to you if there was a main topic. I'll make sure I shorten it. I'll shorten it a lot because we've already gone an hour. but about my move and about how does an urban multi-ethnic church planter end up in rural Middleville working at a suburban white church. And I'm not going to give you all the details, honestly, because this is you're not my wife. Sorry. Oh man, and there's so much. I don't have this like out in notes. Have you noticed I don't do a lot of that? So here's the thing. Oh, where to start? Let me tell you how I ended up in Middleville, because that's a little easier. I did not want to live in Middleville. Like I'm used to living in urban core downtown Lansing. There's a ministry side to that. Like there's a huge part of me that my heart beats for the inner city. My heart beats for the oppressed. Not just my heart beats. Like I have a biblical. This is Bible. This is not Noah's conviction. This is like I'm taking a lot of notes right now about a book that I want to write someday down the line. I feel weird saying that. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I did. But anyway, that's what I do. I use Evernote, and I just have like piles and piles of things that I want to write about. And so it's good for me because I'm going to be just piling into scripture and reading books about money and justice and all this sort of stuff that this sort of culture shock from going from urban inner city, working with the poor, to like the affluent suburbs, homogenous, and wrestling through what part is biblical and scriptural, and then what part is legalistic when it comes to, remember the episode I did, poverty gospel, prosperity gospel. Check that out. It applies to this. And there's parts of that sort of, I'll take Shane Claiborne as an example. I love Shane Claiborne. Honestly, I've interviewed him before on this podcast feed. If you go way, way, way back when I was doing interviews exclusively, Irresistible Revolution, super helpful book. But I can say that because I'm going to give a critique as well that like I think he gets legalistic. He takes it too far, and I talk about that in that episode. I'll let you go listen to it. But my point is, it's not an either or. We have to look at this when it comes to money, the poor, ministry, and say, what does the Bible say? And let's do those things, both when it comes to the gospel and how we're saved and how we cannot add to the gospel. We cannot add works to the gospel. And legalistic people are the worst type of people for me to be around. I just can't. That's another subject. We'll talk about that later. It's never good enough. That's what legalism is. It is never good enough. And the gospel is, say it with me, Jesus was good enough. Like that's the whole gospel. You don't have to be good enough, legalistic people. Jesus was good enough. That's we can never leave that. We can also never leave just the commands in the Bible for justice, for loving the poor. I mean, it's as commanded as anything else in the Bible about sex or about money or, whatever. This is about money too. Anyway, I'm all over the place. What else is new? So I wanted to be in Grand Rapids for one, because I wanted to be at least, I knew we weren't going to end up in a poor neighborhood again. And that's what I wanted. If I was single, I'd be living in a poor neighborhood. I'd be doing CCDA style ministry. Guess what? I'm not single. God ordained it. And I don't say that facetiously. I mean, like, I'm not single. And that's part of this, right? Like, I have a spiritual responsibility to my wife and to my kids and to my wife's calling. My wife is called to be a music teacher to elementary school kids. And for me to be like, your calling doesn't matter. Only my calling matters. That's not loving. That's not loving your wife the way Christ loves the church. 1 Corinthians 13 says, love is not self-seeking. And yeah, while living in the inner city in an urban neighborhood might be noble, and you might think like, wow, that's really sacrificial. For me, is actually self-seeking. Like, that's what I want to do. I want that. That is what I want. That is easy for me. That is life-giving. Like, give me that. Doing what I'm doing, that is really hard for me. Like, I do not want to do what I'm doing. But that's what love is. And I think it's, if I were to quote the source of the quote, I think it's Pete Scazzaro. But the idea is, I think it's, I'll butcher it, but leading through your marriage. Like, I'm not just leading like the Lone Ranger and my wife, like I'm the Lone Ranger on the horse and my wife is holding onto a rope, as I drag her through the desert behind the horse. No, like, we're on this horse together, or it's a tandem bicycle, or I can't think of a good analogy, but two people steering the same ship, right? Is real hard. That's leading through your marriage. So anyway, so many facets to this. So my wife teaches in Middleville. She got a job at Thornapple Kellogg. It's a good school. They support music, and she really liked the vibe. She had a job in a rural district for 11 years out in Weberville. Shout out, Weberville. She loved it. She loved it. She left that job to be closer to where we lived and to kind of simplify life a little bit. But she felt like Thornapple Kellogg felt like Weberville, which is what she loved. And I want my wife to love her job. I want her to love her coworkers. I want her to love that. It's huge, huge. And we thought, well, we could live in the south side of Grand Rapids, and then she could commute 25 minutes to her job. Not the end of the world. But then we want our kids to go to school with where my wife teaches, because moving to Grand Rapids is a huge move. Our older two are second grade and kindergarten, but especially our second grader, like, it's hard, and we love her. And the one constant has always been for school, they go to school where my wife goes. And she's had my wife as her music teacher every single year for like 3 years in a row. It's pretty cool. And we want them to go to school with my wife, even though if I was single, well, obviously I wouldn't have my wife for them to go to school with, but I would do that differently. I would have different thoughts even on school. And I'm telling you, I'll just say it here on the podcast. It's a value. I wish they could be in a multi-ethnic school. They're not. I didn't control that. See, I used to lead where I led and I told God to follow. And I'll be honest with you. There's some fruit. God, in his mercy, blessed some of my reckless leadership. It wasn't based in sin. It was based in Scripture. It was based in God. This should happen. You say this should happen in the Bible, so let's make it happen. And the scriptural metaphor I use is I often killed the Egyptian. Moses wanted to see his people free. And that brother took out a sword and he killed the Egyptian that was beating the Hebrew slave. That was Moses' way of fixing the problem that God wanted fixed. And then he had to go to Midian for 40 years and tend to sheep because he did it his way, not God's way. And then 40 years later, God was like, all right, I'm ready to do it my way now. How about 10 plagues? How about parting the Red Sea? How about manna in the desert, right? Like, God's way worked. God's way was better. And I'm not saying that Grand Rapids is my Midian experience. I'm just saying I'm not going to lead that way anymore. I'm not going to kill the Egyptian. And God has led me to a place I didn't think I would go. I have not lost the Bible's commands to love the poor. And the Bible's framework, I would call it, for multi-ethnic church. And I believe, and I hear the Lord speaking to me in that mysterious, gentle whisper sort of way. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he's with me. And he's going to continue. I think what he's doing, and I can already see it happening, is he's helping me see the other side, which is the side I lived and grew up in my whole life up until 2008, which is when I read the book Divided by Faith, and my paradigm shifted. He's bringing me back to that world, that side of things, so that when I talk about and minister and lead in the area of loving the poor, kingdom theology, we're talking about may your will be done, may your kingdom come, Jesus, Father, may your, I guess specifically Father, it's a prayer to our Father. Father, may your kingdom come, may your will be done here as it is in heaven. Shout out to the episode I did on the Lord's Prayer. You can go check that out. May that happen here on earth the way it happens in heaven. That's a kingdom theology that involves the poor and the oppressed. And there's so much here that I don't have time to get into. The point I'm making here is that when I talk about kingdom theology, when I talk about loving the poor, when I talk about racism, there it is, ba-boom, the R word, systemic racism. When I talk about these issues, multi-ethnic church, stuff that I've talked about for years now, God's putting me back into the world, the white, homogenous, affluent world that I grew up in, so that when I talk about biblical commands of justice, race, oppression, etc., that I do it in a way that is not judgmental, which is how I used to do it. Legalistic, which is how I used to do it. Adding to the gospel, which is how I used to do it. Bringing condemnation into the gospel, Romans 8:1, check it out, which is how I used to do it. And I can already see it happening. I can already see, just being here a little bit, him doing that work in me. It's beautiful. I couldn't have drawn it up, because it's much easier to just stand on the soapbox. And when you're in the thick of it, and you got blood all over you, and you're on the front lines, and you're dirt everywhere, and you're like, it's easy to look and to point and to throw stones, right? Anyway, I'm gonna leave that there. But that's a piece of all this. Why did I take the Ada job? I needed a job, first of all. I left Crossroads back in October 2018. I wanted a break from senior leadership. We did a lot at Crossroads. It was awesome. A lot of fruit. We just bought our first building. In many ways, a very vibrant, urban, incarnational, effective ministry. Oh, man, do I love that church. I love that church. I love those people. I wanted to stay. I did stay. I stepped down from my leadership position because I wasn't healthy. I mean, physically, I wasn't healthy. There was a season that summer, I was having chest pain, hives breaking out, itching till I was like bleeding. I was having headaches, the depression, the insomnia. Oh my, what a nightmare. Pardon the pun, because you can't have nightmares when you have insomnia. I went to counseling just for the insomnia. I was taking medication for insomnia. Crazy, crazy stuff going on. And it's okay, brothers and sisters in vocational ministry. It's okay to not die doing your ministry. It's okay. There's something called self-care. And so that was a part of it. It was like, God has raised up amazing leaders at Crossroads. They didn't have to replace me. Praise God. I mean, I love that. So our elder team, our pastors, they just continued on. They took over. My salary was able to be allocated to some other staff that we would never have been able to have otherwise. I stayed there for 4 months as a volunteer, as a member. I preached once a month. I was not a pastor. I was not an elder. It was amazing. I took a job, like some of you know, with Covenant Eyes. I love Covenant Eyes. You know that. I just talked about Covenant Eyes. They're awesome. Job was a church consulting job. And I don't know. It just, sometimes stuff doesn't work out. Sometimes it wasn't, let's just say, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I tend to have selective listening, and maybe that's probably all it was. They were so gracious. They were so cool. I have a great relationship with them. They blessed me when I left. I was there 2.5 months and blessed me financially. I mean, they were incredible. They're an incredible company, incredible people, and really blessed to just have been able to experience being on that team, even for the short amount of time that I was there. But I needed a job at that point, and so I knew I'd be leaving Crossroads because my job would be in the church again. And so you never know what happens when you call someone randomly up out of the blue. Last December, I was working with the men's ministry at Ada Bible Church, and their men's director called me up. I didn't really know him that well. He was like, "Hey, you should apply for these 2 jobs at Ada." And I was like, "No, I'm good. I don't want to work at Ada, and I want to leave Lansing. I have a job with Covenant Eyes." And eventually, like I said, it just came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to working in the church. And I called him back up and said, "Hey, so let's talk about those jobs." My wife, again, God leads and guides. I'm not going to charge ahead and tell God to hurry up and catch up to me. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I told my wife what was going on. My wife is wired for stability, and she doesn't like change. She did not want to move. She said, "Find a job in Lansing. The only place I'll move is Grand Rapids because my parents live there." Hey, it's for my in-laws. It's where I live. Free snacks. Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, Grand Rapids is like the Mecca of Christianity, Jerusalem. And there's tons of churches here. I was like, well, it's probably where I'm living. There's going to be a lot of jobs there. And, I planted a church, but it's so different than this. But, as far as I need a job, but it's okay to need a job. And so I had a lot of friends actually that work at Ada already, guys that I had known for years, from undergrad, from Lansing, etc. And so, man, just felt really good about this biblical grounding of Ada and the staff and the people. And what I wanted was to not be in senior leadership for this season of my life, because I started that when I was 22 years old, and that is too young. I'm not saying God made a mistake. I think I learned things I only could have learned that way. I learned some priceless things you'll never learn in a classroom or even in an associate position. But I missed out on a lot. I missed out on having older pastors to mentor me, develop me, for me to have to submit to. It's good to submit to leadership and to do what they say. And I missed out on getting to work on a team. And man, Ada is really good with the structure where you are always working on a team. And it was just really attractive to me. And it was a really healthy fit for me. And I love the 18 to 30-year-old age group. I love the creativity that our team, our union team, gets to have with that Tuesday night ministry, which is quite separate from Sunday morning. I don't do anything. I don't have any. It was just weird, super weird. And I'm trying to get adjusted to that as well. But that's how I ended up at Ada. And I was hoping to be able to live in the city. Not going to happen because my wife got a job in Middleville. And so we're going to live in Middleville. And it's weird. No offense, Middleville, but I have called you middle of nowhereville to your friends and it's just God's way of humbling me in a way. For a lot of people, honestly, you'd be like, "Oh, you got this." Even it's sort of an idyllic living situation for some people, and for me, it is a great exercise in God reminding me that my identity is in Him, not in where I live, not in the house I live in, not in the place I work. I am His son, whom He loves and whom He is well pleased. That's my breath prayer, as you know. Go back and listen to some previous episodes, and you'll find that how often that is my bedrock for everything. I am his son, whom he loves and whom he is well pleased. And nothing can change that. Not where I live, not where I work. And so that's how an urban multi-ethnic church planner ended up in rural Middleville and working at a suburban white church. And God is actively at work. So I hope I said that well. I don't know. Hopefully that came out okay. So, yeah. Man, you know what? I'm going to tell you something. I am tired. I am exhausted. And I have a really good nose rant for those stupid Chevy commercials. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll have to start leading with Noah's rant. I keep not. Those Chevy commercials are just the worst. Real people, not actors. Oh man, that guy. Oh man, that I'm just gonna keep that as the teaser. I'm gonna be real with you. My limits. See, practicing them now. I'm worn out. Just got that house last night. Accepted that offer. Man, that was exhausting. It's like, ugh. I was talking to my dad about it. He's like, you sound tired. I'm like, well, it's not every day you buy something for, X amount of dollars. Especially for me, I'm just really thrifty. I love to live below my means. And I so I don't know if maybe it's jet lag from that. So yeah. Oh, you know what else I'm going to start doing? I didn't do it this time, but I'm going to start, if I can figure it out with Podbean, I'm going to start live streaming these episodes. What that means is I'll never have to edit them. That's the reason. They're going to be live. Bam! Live! And then, of course, you'll listen like normal if you want to the podcast. But I'm going to have commercials. I'm going to make up my own commercials so I can get drinks of water and take breaks during it. But I have 30 seconds of outro music, and I'm practicing it right now. It's playing right now. And I will see you next time. Until next time, on the flip side
with Noah Filipiak is a South Francis Press production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K Lake Music. Used with permission. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found.
Souls needing revivals. What I do? Influence like the cup full of that Bombay. Kelly's to them Tom Hanks. Lexus to them Andres. Hoping they check in my inner reverence. Stressing for leverage. That they see the king's tracks on the payment leading to heaven. Yow, dripping in that gold that don't perish. People selling fake. See the green around their belly. Taking refuge in his hand. See his palms, my living quarters. Close them when I'm finished. It's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, you know it's going down. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your days. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Tripping upon the premise, see lyrics painting the image, pointing to redemption to the one who got them splinters. Cause that cross is nothing pretty. So why the beauty pageants and caught up in emotions and following your passions? Talking that freedom, all people need them more than that Easter or coffee shop discussions, debating over baristas. Please, sir, this is why we inked up. Even when they do the autopsy, they still see him. Freedom coming quickly. Bars from the spirit, put it through the preamp and mix it like a chemist. Put it in the airwaves and hoping that they hear it. If there's some confusion, then I hope you see him clearly. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your game.